Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Evan McCauley, president of the club, and we are thrilled to have you joining us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. Come out and join us for a meeting. We'd love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact that we are having on the local community and world, please visit rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and be the inspiration.
Push the button. Speaker working? Yeah. Is this working? No. No. Yes, it is. You say so. Okay, we'll turn it up, but there was feedback. So remember, you guys asked for feedback. Yeah, you guys asked for feedback. No, my fault. Sounds like it. Okay, good morning. Good morning. It was good feedback. Our invocation this morning is by Phil Tobin. Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning.
Let's pray. As Rotarians, we are generally blessed with the good fortune and opportunities unknown to many. Help us to review our lives with honesty as we consider our priorities and opportunities to help others. Open our hearts to those in need. Help us to share our financial resources, but also our intangible assets of knowledge, leadership, creativity to make our city, our state, our country, and our world a better place. In your name we ask this. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which you're about to receive from thy bounty. For your name, amen. Amen. Thank you, Bill.
And lead us in the pledge and four-way test, Tom Page.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
is the truth.
Second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
and fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Good job.
Thank you, Tom. And lead us in song, Chris Barker.
Good morning, Chris. So I was thinking this morning, I remember when I was in elementary school, every morning we'd start the day with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we would sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. So I'm thinking maybe that's a great way for us to start our morning. Maybe back to my elementary school days from about 20 years ago.
You flunked math, didn't you?
No.
I was really good. Really good at
Ta-da.
He's good.
My
Country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good morning, Rotarians. This thing's working now, isn't it? All right, today's July 18th. What else has happened on July 18th? Well, back in 1877, Thomas Edison recorded voice for the first time. Today, you were there. I was there. Wow. Your voice, too. Today also is John Glenn, the astronaut's birthday, so we're celebrating that. And what's really exciting, especially with Art on the Green coming up and our Scout Cabin, is today is National Hot Dog Day. And a fun fact about that, does anybody know what the world record is for hot dogs? Close. Somebody Somebody, I heard it, 72. 72 hot dogs in about 12 minutes. Joe
10 minutes.
Chestnut set
10
the world
minutes, but that was
record,
just a rotary.
I believe, last year. But that's enough interesting facts about today. What do we have going on at Rotary? We've got a lot going on here. I'm going to ask Chris to come forward and introduce our guests, and then we'll get started.
Good morning again. So if we have two guests with us today, and if they can please rise when I introduce them. First, we have Will Brown, guest of Mimi Becker.
Good morning, Will.
Joining us. And then my guest and friend, Heidi Schweighofer.
Good morning.
That is wife of David Schweighofer, one of our newer members. Maybe we can work on her now. Thank you for joining us today.
They get a discount. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. And to begin this morning, I'd like to call up Ron Strobel and Gail Royster. We have a special grant presentation this morning.
Wow.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
As a result of our fabulous gala, we have a grant presentation. The actual check got to Heidi a little while ago, but we wanted to do the formal presentation today. So this is for EMS outreach, and as you remember, they were one of the 3 featured beneficiaries from the gala, and they were embarking on this new program called
Are you okay?
All right. Good audience. So with that, we are going to present a check for $3,000 to the EMS outreach. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. No, you don't. Thank you, Jay. And how do you
I just want to say thank you so much. This is going to help us really get the program moving. And we are doing everything we can to get the word out. We've had appearances on real TV, cable TV, public service announcements, the Hudson Hub, Hudson Neighbors magazine. Everything we can do. We've been at the ice cream social, we've been at the farmers market handing out brochures. But if you have ideas for folks that might benefit from a phone call a couple of times a week, please refer them, because I think that's our greatest source of increasing this program. So thank you so much.
So switching gears just a little bit from our Hudson Rotary Foundation to Rotary International Foundation, Joe Zapatowski has a special Paul Harris Fellow announcement.
Good morning, Rotarian.
Good morning.
Well, Joe Avella, are you here? Would you join me? Either this side or that side, it really doesn't matter.
Ambidextrous.
Look at the smile on that guy's face. Here's a guy who does a great lot of things for this club.
Yes.
The presentation of the Paul Harris Fellow recognition is the Rotary Foundation's way of expressing its appreciation for a substantial contribution to its humanitarian and educational programs. It's named for our founder, Paul Harris. We move closer to a world of peace and goodwill today as Joe Bella becomes a Paul Harris Fellow +1. That simply means that there's either $2,000 in points or actual dollars that has gone to the foundation to do good in the world.
Congratulations to you, Joe. You are one of 22 members of our Rotary Club who have achieved the distinction of becoming Paul Harris Fellows. You, however, are a Paul Harris Fellow and are becoming a Paul Harris Fellow +1. 12 of these are Paul Harris Fellows. One is a Paul Harris Fellow +2, and yet another is a Paul Harris Fellow +8. Joe, you have become the 9th Paul Harris Fellow +1 in this club. Congratulations. The monetary gifts of Paul Harris Fellows to the International Foundation are a commitment to peace and a better life for people across the world whom these Paul Harris Fellows may never meet. This is truly a selfless action and so wonderfully honoring the Rotary 4-way test. Joe, it's because of gifts like yours that the Rotary International Foundation is able to carry out an array of programs that achieve beneficial changes to our world. These great programs include fighting disease, promoting peace, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, and growing local economies. Our Rotary International Foundation was named the world's outstanding foundation in 2016, and we received that award at our 2017 conference in San Francisco. In becoming a Paul Harris Fellow +1, Joe joins a remarkable company of Rotarians throughout the world, all recognized for their devotion to the ideal of peace and understanding. It is the goal of Rotarians the world over, and one that Joe shares. All Paul Harris Fellows present, please stand to applaud our awardee as he becomes a Paul Harris Fellow +1. And join me in applauding Joe's efforts to help our Rotary International Foundation to achieve its goals. Joe went, oh, you're just going to give it to him. You're not going to get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Next person I'd like to call up is John Adams.
I'm not sure.
John is an awesome new member who's going to do great things for our club, and he's still got his red badge on here. John's been, he's gotten through the pledging process, and we'd like to award him with his gold badge today.
Oh.
So if you could give me a round of applause and welcome John.
Could you tell them about the initiation ceremony?
Sort of like a fraternity.
All right, a couple more announcements here, then we'll get into our program. Let's see here. We'll go with Patrick Shearer for Art on the Green.
So Bob told me that I would be following and helping him this year, but he's not here, so I guess I'm plugging on Art on the Green today. So I hope this isn't a tradition when we get to Art on the Green.
No.
No, so. We have the sign-up sheet for Art on the Green. We have added 2 spots for each one of the Saturday sessions because our Scout Troop 321 and Pack 321, of which are club sponsors, are going to be having a display going on over at the Scout House on that Saturday. So we're thinking that we'll be attracting lots of kids, and those that are going to want to come over to the Scout display, and with kids come their parents. And their parents are potential future Rotarians. So we want to have 2 Rotarians over at the Scout cabin in addition to all the Scout display stuff that's going on, so that we can talk to parents about possibly joining Rotary. So there's a couple extra spots that are available on the Saturday sign-up as opposed to the Sunday sign-up. So we're hoping that all of you can take part and sign up for that. And then right behind it, there's another sign-up sheet for our Scout Troop is having its 100th anniversary union party on the 4th, and our club is joining in on that. So you have an opportunity to sign up to attend that as well, so we know how much food to have for that. Thank you, Evan.
Do you have to be there right at 11, or can you just
You
stop
can
in
come
anytime?
anytime in that window, yep.
Ron, did you want to mention anything about the Drink Red for Haiti through Ken Fogel?
Can you put the drink red, the Akron Children's Hospital is having a fundraiser for the children of Haiti, for the hospital in Haiti that does the heart surgeries there. And at this event, you bring 3 bottles of Cabernet Sauvignon in bags. They're all supposed to be from the same vintner. And it's a tasting party, and they have hors d'oeuvres. And whoever's wine is judged to be the best goes home with 1 bottle of everybody's Cabernet. So you bring 3, and you could go home with maybe a pickup load or a semi-load.
Is that on our website?
It was number 10 on the slides.
Oh.
It did scroll through there.
Oh, it was on the slides.
Yeah, it was number 10.
I didn't know it was on the slides.
The date is, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Number 10.
Yeah.
It says drink on it.
Okay, I got this.
And I know Ken Vogel and his wife are going to be there. He said they've attended in the past. It's in a huge tent, and I think it's down
It's number 11.
at or near the hospital. There we go.
Thank you for the suggestion. I think it's number 10.
Okay, Saturday, August 11th.
Appreciate your help.
And they're in your in Evan's message today. I think there was more information. The actual brochure for the event. So if you didn't see it there, maybe go back and check Evan's email to all of us yesterday or Monday, and all the details are there. So it's another fun way to help support the children of Haiti that are having heart problems. Thank you.
So with this scrolling banner, my goal is to keep everyone informed, see what's going on for the day, what's coming up. Feel free to send me announcements or updates or information that you'd like to have scrolling through here, and we can include that. Tomorrow, on the district level, there's a district banner exchange and award ceremony up in Cleveland, and if you have any interest in joining me for that, please let me know today and we can get you a ticket. That concludes our announcements for today, and I'd like to call Joe Avella forward to get our presentation started.
We're right on time. So good morning. So today we continue with our July discussion of arts and culture. And we're pleased to have with us Terry Montremoli, who is the executive director of the Tri-C Jazz Fest. Terry is a graduate of the Cleveland Institute of Music. She taught at the school for a while and then freelanced for a number of years before venturing into art administration. In 1991, she began working for the Tri-C Jazz Fest, where she quickly discovered that the jazz world needed help in marketing, fundraising, and audience development. In 2005, Terry joined the Detroit Jazz Festival as managing director and went on to serve as artistic and executive director for 5 years up until 2011. She came back to Cleveland, and currently Terry is artistic and executive director of the Tri-C Jazz Fest. Over the past few years, she has moved the festival to a summer weekend destination event with year-round programs. Terry excels at connecting audiences to art advocating for education and bringing along the next generation of artists. With a lifetime experience both on and behind the stage, she is convinced that the arts heal and empower people of all ages and from all walks of life. Terry Pontremoli, please.
I probably have, oh, I can leave it right there?
Yeah.
Wow.
You can move it down a little bit so we can see your face better.
Do you want to,
So we can see you. Oh, there you go.
otherwise it's right in the middle of my head.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Thanks for inviting me. It's lovely to be here with all of you. I feel like I'm in the country. There's this really funny jazz story. I don't know if any of you remember seeing this huge picture of all these very famous jazz musicians standing in front of a brownstone in New York. It was called A Great Day in Jazz, Great Day in Harlem. And when you looked at that picture, you saw all kinds of legends, all gone now. But this picture was taken, like, I think in 1951. And there happened to be, one of the musicians had a really early on video camera. I mean, where he could actually shoot movies. And you saw all these jazz musicians gathering on this street at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. That was when they decided that that's how they could do it. And, you know, without emails and, you know, the way we communicate now, it's kind of hard to even imagine how they got everybody to do this. But there's one musician quoted as saying, "I didn't know there was another 11 o'clock." And you guys have your meetings at 7 o'clock, so that's great. So I am very passionate about jazz because I feel that more than any other art form, it really says a lot about America. It says a lot about our mix. It says a lot about our history. And there's painful things as well as really triumphant things, but it really is truly American. It's probably America's greatest cultural gift to the world. It started out, you know, in New Orleans with people, you know, the Creoles and the European people that were all like kind of combining rhythms and written music, and then became this wonderful body of work. All of you probably can really relate to the big bands when jazz was actually considered a popular music, mostly because people danced to it, and how it grew from there. It was an art form that was taught on the street. It was mentored one-to-one. What it is, and Wynton Marsalis has said this, it's about democracy. It's about freedom. There's a written page. There are forms that you stay with, but within that, you're allowed to do all kinds of free things that you wouldn't do in classical music, right? So there's this whole beauty of freedom, and also the respect of the way a band leader is able to trust his musicians to support him when he is doing something more free, and how they can trust and listen and go with him. So it's a beautiful communication thing. And it's really interesting to watch musicians as they play because they are definitely in a zone. It's a zone that maybe most of us would never even quite understand. So I feel that it's also very relevant. Jazz musicians have always listened to the music that they are growing up around, whether it's folk music, whether it's hip hop, whether it's Latin music, whether it's church music. They've always incorporated all kinds of different musics. And especially when you look at Latin jazz, you can think about Dizzy Gillespie and his trip to Cuba before Cuba closed down to the world. That was like such a stunning moment in music history because he heard all these rhythms and began incorporating them in his day-to-day music. So jazz musicians not only listen, pick up, reflect, project out, but they are also like probably some of our best ambassadors in the world that go out and tour. So that's why I just wanted to say that this is what kind of drives me. Tri-C Jazz Fest is an interesting organization. It started in 1980, It started as a 2-day educational event where kids from the suburbs, all playing in their jazz bands, came down to the Tri-C Metro campus. There would be a musician like a Clark Terry, who was known for his education skills, that would listen to the bands play, critique them, do a little workshop, and then they would end with a concert. And that's how it all started. So it started with this educational mission, and that educational mission has kept us really true for all these years. We're approaching 40 years next year, so it's kind of hard to believe we've been around this long. But the idea of this, it started out, like, as I said, for 2 days, and then it kind of grew to 3 days, and then there was suddenly a concert at Playhouse Square in the evening instead of a concert at campus. So anyway, it started that way, and then it became a 10-day blowout in April. And it would be in all these various venues, including Playhouse Square, but maybe sometimes a concert at Severance Hall, maybe some concerts at the East Cleveland Public Library or the Caribou House, but concerts all over, some free, some ticketed. And definitely a part of the community, but always still with the focus on students and students coming down and being able to interact with jazz musicians. So it blossomed for a long time. And then there was this individual named Tommy LaPuma. I don't know if anybody's heard of Tommy LaPuma. But Tommy, I was reading a newspaper one day when I was working for the Jazz Fest. It was the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and there was a story about Tommy LaPuma. Tommy was a record producer. He won many Grammys. He was the brains and the producer behind Diana Krall, Al Jarreau, George Benson, just names that are quite big in the entertainment business. And he sold over 72 million records. Remember records?
Yeah.
I miss them.
Go back.
But anyway, so it turns out that Tommy was from Cleveland. I was reading the newspaper, I said, Tommy's from Cleveland. He grew up on Kinsman. He grew up in an Italian neighborhood. His father was a barber. His father wanted him to be a barber. He was playing saxophone. He kept being drawn to the music. And he had a disease when he was young, very young, where he ended up being bedridden for about a year and a half. And in that year and a half, the thing that saved him was the radio. And he listened to the radio constantly and listened to some of the great soul music and some of the great blues and some of the great jazz. And it just transformed his life. So anyway, I thought, my goodness, we should get to know Tommy. He's one of us. And it turned out that when Diana played in town, Tommy would show up. And so through Tommy's family members, I got to meet him. And so when it came time, we started a nice relationship. But when it came time for the festival to celebrate its 25th anniversary, I said, Tommy, I think we should make this festival a tribute to you and your accomplishments. And he said, I think I could bring Natalie, he meant Natalie Cole, and Al Jarreau, and David Sanborn, and Diana. And so we got to planning this big extravaganza for our 25th anniversary. And the reason that I say this story is that he became a true friend at Tri-C. One of the beautiful things he did was he named our building. He paid for the naming of our building. So we have this beautiful state-of-the-art building that faces, if you're driving on 77 and going to downtown, you can see it. You can see it on your right. It's a very big building. It's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame archives are. But we have recording studios where we teach all the fine finesse thing of actually doing live sound and recorded sound. And we have a jazz studies program. Anyway, it is now called the Jill and Tommy LaPuma Center for the Creative Arts. Tommy is essential because he became a really good conspirator. So, fast forward, I left Tri-C after the 25th anniversary. It was this huge success. We raised more money than we had ever raised, and raised the profile. We had this great, it was wonderful, truly wonderful. And so I decided that maybe I should leave Tri-C on a high note and just do something else. And I ended up working at the Detroit Jazz Festival for several years. And that festival is a huge festival on Labor Day weekend, all free, all outdoors. People love outdoors, but let me tell you, when you're a producer, I mean, you know, you spend your time looking at the skies because you really have no idea and you have no control over what's going to happen. But that was a beautiful experience for me, and Detroit has a rich cultural history, and it's really rooted in jazz. So that was wonderful. But I came back to Cleveland, and Tommy was with me, and we kind of got the college to think about another way to present Jazz Fest. So it became this summer destination event 5 years ago. We experimented with doing it like Playhouse Square said, go ahead, let us know how it turns out. And we took the little plaza that was, you know, right there at Playhouse Square. We put a little stage on it. We did some outdoor things, but we still did indoor. And the whole idea about the indoor is that you buy a pass, and you get to go to all the concerts for a very low price. But the concerts are in the State Theater, they're in the Hanna Theater, they're in the Allen Theater, and they're at different times of the day, so you can reach all kinds of music in all kinds of halls. And it's really kind of a groovy thing because most jazz festivals don't have such a beautiful place to present music. And when people come and do reviews from out of town, they always comment on the sound and the feel in these beautiful halls. So anyway, but Tommy helped me get the college to come on board and do this thing so that it is a summer destination event and a beautiful thing for our whole city. And it didn't feel so much now, it felt before like it was Tri-C, now it feels like it's a Cleveland event. We do all kinds of year-round activities. So we're always teaching. We have a summer camp that goes on for 2 weeks before the festival. Those kids get to play at the festival outdoors. Their families get to go with them and have, you know, they get free tickets to some of the concerts. And so we are always walking the walk of the educational aspect of this. I was a violin teacher for many years, and there is something really beautiful to watching a kid respond to something. When the light bulb goes on, you see a little sweat on the top of the nose, and they're just like, oh, you know. And seeing people find their voice is just really exciting. So it's something that we feel very proud of. The festival has done many, many big concerts, and I just kind of want you to know that a lot of the names that you'd remember, Dave Brubeck, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, Rosemary Clooney, Herbie Hancock, Diana Krall, Natalie Cole, Lou Rawls. We've presented just about everybody who is anybody in this business. My favorite story, still gives me goosebumps to tell, is when we presented Ella Fitzgerald. She was, it was a year before she died, she was only 73. She was in terrible health. We saw her get off the plane and it was like, okay, really? I mean, she's gonna sing. But she got on stage and it was a complete sellout at the State Theater. She had her trio with her. She just scattered, her voice, the range was just high, and not the beautiful voice that it was when she was young, but the control and the knowledge of the changes and being able to improvise around it was all there. And she had a very protective manager with her, and the manager, you know, after she was done with her last song, the audience just stood and cheered, and it was wild. And she went off stage, and the manager said, that's it, she can't do anymore. And she said, I'm going out there. And she went out. She did 4 encores. Wow. It was so impressive and beautiful. And I think that we got the last really good performance from her. And you never know, you know, it's really interesting when you watch people grow and develop. So one of the things that we have been very proud of is that we have this program. And the Jazz Fest actually started the Jazz Studies program. When the college had the Jazz Fest, there was no Jazz Studies program, which was kind of unusual. So we started paying for it. the money that we raised and earned, we put towards teachers in a year-round program at the school. It is now a bona fide program at the school. We don't have to do that anymore. But we also have a prep program on Saturdays. And we have a lot of kids who have come to us and studied with us and then have gone on to become really great jazz musicians in their own right. They live all over the world. And in our 40th anniversary, one of the things we're going to do is a series of concerts called Flying Home, which, how many of you know the song Flying Home, Lionel Hampton? No? Some of you might know it. So it's kind of a little nod to him, but the idea that we have all these musicians coming home to help us celebrate our 40th anniversary. How many of you have heard the name Dominic Farinacci? Dominic was a young man growing up in Solon. And this is, again, another interesting story. I met his mother because she was working in the restaurant business. I was setting up a party for Diana Krall after her concert. And so we were sitting there talking about the food and the menu, and I was asking her not to beat us up too much because we're a nonprofit. You guys know the story. So I basically said, you know, yeah, this is one of the things we do. And she said, well, you guys teach, right? And I said, yes, we do. And we have this great program on Saturday mornings. And she said, my son just started playing the trumpet, and he listens to Louis Armstrong all the time, and he never puts it down. And I said, I think you need to take your kid to our program. So she did. And a few years later, Dominic was 13, a few years later, Wynton Marsalis came to play at the festival. We had a lot of his band members come to the school and do master class with our kids. And so they, workshopped the kids, but they pulled Dominic aside and said, you need to play for Wynton. So after the concert, Wynton is in his dressing room, and Dominic is standing, this young 16-year-old, standing outside his dressing room door with his trumpet, and they kind of pushed him in, said play. And he played for Wynton, and Wynton said, you're going to be famous someday. When you come to New York, look me up. I will show you around, we'll talk about Juilliard. And the bottom line was that he got a full ride to Juilliard's jazz program, and he is Tommy's last record that he produced with Dominic. And Dominic is now actually, even though he is mostly in New York and going all over the world traveling and playing, he's also one of our teachers. So it is a beautiful full circle story, and it's something that I feel really passionate about. So basically, we're coming up to our 40th anniversary. And so we plan to do a lot of big things, and some things that are kind of interesting. We have some really great friends in our business. Christian McBride, who is a bassist, and if you ever listen to WCPN, you might hear his Jazz Night in America. He's got this low, husky voice, and he talks to jazz musicians, and he plays their music. He's one of our good friends, and he's going to do a tribute to the great Bobby Womack, who was a Clevelander, and it's going to be a program that's really about that kind of soul music, but it will be with his spin. So we plan on doing things that really look inward at Cleveland, but also show how far we've come with our education and with this music. So that's basically all I have to say. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I'll start off. So for those of us who enjoy jazz but aren't really sophisticated on music, here's an easy question. How do you define jazz versus other forms of music?
That's a beautiful question because jazz is not just one thing. And I think that I think we should have a whole campaign called, like, it's just jazz, do not be afraid. Because I think people are intimidated. So what do we know about jazz? Well, we know there's big band. We know that the Great American Songbook was completely, wildly, and successfully adapted by jazz musicians. Just about every standard that came off the Broadway stage is interpreted by jazz musicians all the time. There's, just the people that sing, that sing, and everybody can relate to singers. There's Latin jazz, there's funk, there's, smooth. There's so much that if you say you don't like jazz, it's almost like saying, you know, like food. It's like, what food don't you like? Because there's probably something in there that you like. And when I put together a festival, I really try to put all kinds of different things. Like I love Brazilian music. I like there's something very, you can hear and feel the waves in the sand in Brazilian music. It just takes you away. And I think that most people that would say, well, I'm not sure I really like jazz, would sit at a Brazilian concert and go, this is really beautiful. So it's a very good question. It's a little bit of everything. The one thing that is important to remember about jazz is groove. Groove is a very important thing. It's hard to sit at a jazz concert and not snap your fingers on 2 and 4. It's kind of hard not to like bop your head. And also that there's always improvisation involved. So you will hear somebody like do a song, play the melody straight, and then make their own melody. So the improvisation is a very important aspect of it. Yes?
I went to the Kent,
Thanks.
I went to the Kent Blues Festival this weekend, and we were in one bar, and everybody turned around after and said, I think this is jazz. So how close is jazz and blues sometimes?
Very, very close. It reminds me of the joke. There's this joke about what's the difference between jazz and blues. And blues is musicians playing for 40 people, playing 3 chords for 40 people, and jazz is playing 40 chords for 3 people. The blues is definitely the root of jazz. There's no question about it. When those guys, Howlin' Wolf and all those people were like just singing this raw stuff and doing what they were doing with 3 chords, that was the beginning. But yes, there's a lot of crossover, and certainly shuffle, the rhythms, shuffle a lot of blues stuff, and especially when they use the B3. And one of the pictures, I don't know if you saw the old man in the turban. Did you guys see the old?
Yep.
Okay, so that's Dr. Lonnie Smith. And he's not a doctor. And he doesn't wear the turban for religious reasons. He wears it because he likes it. It takes him 10 minutes, we found out, to put it on. Because he has to wrap it in a specific way. And he was, we had him he's a B3 master. And the reason that he's called doctor is the way he chemically comes up with all these different sounds on the organ. So that's part of his thing. And he was standing there with Grace Kelly. He was the oldest person on our lineup this year, and she was the youngest person on our lineup. She's 26. She's been in the business for 10 years. They discovered Grace Kelly when she was 16, and she's a wonderful saxophone player. So, but anyway, when you hear B3, for sure, that bluesy, down-home groove, swinging in 4/4, then it's, yes. So they're very, very closely aligned.
I'll throw out another one associated with the schools, and we have a really strong jazz program at Hudson. I'm wondering, do we participate in the Tri-C Jazz Festival?
You know, we have done a little bit. What has happened is that there is also the Lakeland Jazz Festival, which is in March, and a lot of the schools in this area end up going to that because it's closer. But we did do a really wonderful night about 3 years ago with Hudson, where we took the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, great, really great band, and we took them to Hudson for a day where they worked with the kids all day long, broke into sessions with rhythm sections and horn sections, and did classes on improvisation, and then at the top of the night, the Hudson band played, and then the Columbus Jazz Orchestra played. So yes, we want to do more of that. And the kids that come to our camp and on our Saturday programs, they come from all over. They come from the city, but also from Solon, Hudson, Westlake, Brecksville.
Great.
Yeah. It's interesting when you look at the breakdown, because like when you look at everybody's marching bands, there's hundreds of kids, right? And then you look at the concert band and there's about 65 kids. And then you look at the jazz band and it's 18. So it gets distilled to a small number of kids that actually end up playing this music. But I do think that they get something from the experience that they don't get anywhere else. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, I'm a classical musician. I grew up, though, listening to my father play jazz guitar. And I grew up knowing the American Songbook. And when I started freelancing, one of the great things that I got to do was play backup in orchestras for Tony Bennett and for Smokey Robinson and Peggy Lee and, you know, I mean, just Perry Como. What I started realizing at that point too was that the musicians that traveled with all of these bands were jazz musicians. They were people who could arrange and write, and that was the other beauty that I got out of it, was listening to the back and playing the background music to the orchestrations. George Benson playing the great, everybody knows Breezin' and all those great tunes. Those orchestrations were done by a very famous arranger named Klaus Ogerman. And I just realized that, you know, what a wonderful aspect the American sound is. And that when you go to Europe and you go to Japan, you see how people are like, they love this music. They can't get enough of it. We take it for granted in our country, but they don't take it for granted in other places in the world. And they all have their own versions of jazz. It's been a highly influential music.
Sure. Please. Hey, Tom, you and I remember when we sponsored a group from Kent State to come out. If I remember that was sort of a master class that lasted a whole semester.
It was a professor from Youngstown State.
Was it Youngstown State? Okay.
Dan?
Yeah, Dave.
Dave Morgan.
Dave
Morgan, the bass player.
It was an incredible experience. You talk about, mentioned about that little child that all of a sudden has perforation on. I witnessed that. And what that man did for those kids in that school, it would just bring tears to your eyes.
Yeah.
He was just woven right into that. And it was just an incredible experience. So God love you for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, as I said, with children, you know, what you realize is that we all talk about talent. We always say, you know, this person is so talented. But the thing that's really, what you really see catch with people is desire. It's that person like going, wow, what is this? And delving in and going deep, and then just almost not wanting to look up for a long time. It is that desire, and giving kids the opportunities to do this makes us feel really good.
Quick question. So it seems like you are wearing a lot of hats. Education, you're a musician, you're putting on huge and awesome events. What really drives you? Is it a combination of all of those, or one in particular? And what's exciting to you?
I am truly a fan of this music and its musicians. Working with jazz musicians is complete joy. I can't explain it. I've been a classical musician all my life, and there's a camaraderie and all that, but there's something unique in the jazz thing. I think it's the mixture of people. It's the mixture. There's black, white, Hispanic. It's not just one thing. And everybody feels free and equal. So that is what drives me, you know, like in my fundraising, it's like, I want this to keep going. And it's not the easiest thing to fundraise for. And there was a time when it was really hard. I mean, and the fact is, Wynton Marsalis, we can all look to him as probably the guy who really made the difference. The fact that there's this whole house at Lincoln Center, Jazz at Lincoln Center, dedicated to jazz. 3 different concert halls, all kinds of year-round educational programs. That is, people call it the house that Wynton built. But, I mean, he built it out of that sheer love. It's love. It's love. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Awesome presentation this morning. We're going to do our Road-a-Buck raffle. All right, the payout, the lunch money today is $12. You can go buy a pizza with that, maybe.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you can go buy a hot dog with it, definitely.
Under $10.
The winning ticket for it?
All right, the last four, 6517.
Oh my God.
Right after me. I've got 1-6.
Doug McDowell.
When is the Jazz Festival?
That's a great question. Hey Terry, we have a question on the table for you. When is the Jazz Festival?
Oh, it's always the fourth weekend in June.
Okay.
Now, it is
So you missed
always,
it.
we've been in June since 5 years.
You
But
missed it.
yes, it'll be the fourth weekend in June.
Okay, great.
There's no kidding.
Can you repeat that on the mic? It's the fourth weekend in June.
Fourth weekend in June.
Very
Did
good.
everybody hear that?
Yeah. No, it's just a recording, it, so it only takes.
Recorded.
Oh, got it.
I don't remember very well. Yeah. You know what I'm gonna do?
Hot dog money.
So Heidi, it's not much.
I love it, yeah.
Here's $12 for RUOJ. It's much, but it's a little bit.
And Terry, thanks for teaching me something today about jazz. I learned a lot, and one individual that you mentioned that I wanted to learn just a little bit more about was Ella Fitzgerald, and I've got a great quote for us to end the day on from Ella Fitzgerald. Just don't give up trying to do what you want. I'm gonna start that over again. Just don't give up trying to do what you really want to do. Where there is love and inspiration, I don't think that you can go wrong.
Very good.